Let's do that.
Perfect.
You go ahead, Laura. Take over.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. Welcome, Raphael. I love your background, Raphael. Looks great. You have some really cool backgrounds. Hi, Hector. Ronnie, good guy. You got your mask on. Laura.
Hi,
Wilfredo,
good afternoon.
Sergio,
Good
Maria,
God bless you.
Santiago. God bless you all.
Hi.
Great to see you.
Bless you
You're
too.
getting to the end of your school year. Yay. Getting to the end of the classes pretty soon, I heard. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I hope you get a little break just to relax. Such a challenging time to be a teacher. You guys are just doing such a great job. So we're gonna open up our chat, and while people are coming in, because I heard there's another tropical storm. I think every Monday and Thursday night when we have class is automatically a really big tropical storm. And I know it's very hard to connect with the internet. So I'm going to give you a chance to hear a little from the teachers. And I'm going to just call my co-teachers by name, just because that'll be easier to know when to unmute yourselves. And maybe you can share something that you do in the summer to prepare for the next school year. You know, like all of these teachers here, they're taking our course to learn, to get some new teaching ideas, you know, to use in September. What about you all? What kind of things do you do, or social media, or where do you go to get new ideas for your teaching? So I'm going to kind of have to cold call you. Sorry about that, but I'm going to start, let's see, with, I'm going to start with Frederick.
Hello.
Hi, Fred.
Hi. Yeah, during the summer I usually travel, but now I'm not traveling. So I'm getting ideas from the botanical garden. New York has an amazing botanical garden, and they run week-long PDs for teachers on how to include art and science, for example, and also gardening. I do a plant club at my school, and I'm getting a lot of ideas from the classes that I'm taking actually this week.
Oh, Frederick has some wonderful project-based learning that he does with nature, with plant growing. And actually, Frederick, when we talk, I don't know if it's next week or the following week, about curriculum design, I'm going to ask you maybe to share, but I'll email you. Thank you, Frederick. How about Galia? What's something that you do, Galia, in the summer to get new ideas for your teaching?
So something that I started doing, and it was thanks to Laura, because I took a class with her last December.
Yeah.
And one of the projects that came out of that class was like using Twitter. So like I've been more active, like following other educators that teach English. And just seeing right now, I think there's like a conference going on and they have their videos on YouTube. So at nighttime, when I get a chance, I like to look at some of the sessions on YouTube. But yeah, Twitter is great for that.
That's such a great idea. We're going to talk about that too. Different ideas for social media, to use them well, you know, for professional development. So I'm going to come back to you on that too, Galia. Hannah, how about you this summer? Any like ways that you're kind of thinking about getting some fresh ideas for the fall?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Galia was saying. I'm in a few different Facebook groups for teachers, specifically dual language teachers. And through one of those groups, I found out about a bilingual educators virtual summit that they run every summer, and you can access all of the workshops completely online at your own speed, but they have lots of different topics, and they do the workshops in English and Spanish.
That is really cool. And if that's free, we got to definitely share that with all the teachers here too.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
can focus on
excellent.
that.
That's awesome. Let's see. How about Leanne? How about you, lady?
So I usually work the summer program at our school. But like one way that I get some new ideas is I actually been on TikTok a lot. There's a lot of teacher TikToks, very popular. And I also get a lot of like book recommendations there for books that kids are reading now. So trying to get new material into the classroom. I'm reading Aru Shah and the End of Time right now.
Oh, that's great. TikTok. I have to get with TikTok. I'm really like an old lady if I don't get with TikTok. So you're going to have to help me out there, Leanne, tell me who to follow. Because when I go on TikTok, my mind, an hour passes looking at, I don't know what. Okay. How about Sarah? How about you? Anything that you like to go to kind of refresh for the fall?
Well, since I teach an adult program, I do not have the summers off. There's
Yeah.
no reset or refresh for me. But we do have a lowered enrollment in the summer because, our day laborers are usually working more. So that's usually when I will sort of go back and look at the student feedback that we've received, looked at the evaluations that I've done of the courses for the past year. Watch recordings that I have my teachers, because I work with a lot of volunteer teachers as well as teaching myself, do, and sort of observe all of the practices of the past year and try and see what I can fine tune, see if I can add more opportunities, especially for students to produce language in the lessons and reduce the amount of time that the teachers are talking in the classroom. So for me, the summer isn't really time for me to take a break. It's actually kind of my I open the hood a little bit and do my
I like that. I like that, open the hood. That's a very good idiomatic expression or metaphorical expression, to kind of like with a car where you open the front or the hood of the car and look inside and try to add some oil and grease to it. I think Cora is here now. Cora, what about you?
Yeah, so in the summers, I used to try to go in person to some of these educational institutions and cultural institutions in New York. They had summer programs a lot of the time. And now I'm just taking advantage of what they have put online, which you can really access from anywhere. So a lot of New York museums and things like that, they have great programs for teachers and educational resources.
Oh yeah, I'm going to ask you to pull a couple of those websites for us to share with our Dominican colleagues, because as we've said, many times, and I always get emotional when I say it, but we have such a strong relationship with you all, our Dominican teacher colleagues, and in New York City. And there are so many things now that are free online, kind of because of the pandemic. So we want to make sure that we get you a lot of those resources as well, because your students can take a field trip through the Metropolitan Museum of Art or the Empire State Building, or visit the Statue of Liberty using so many of these pictures and tools. So welcome everyone. We are going to be talking about reading tonight, and we're going to just as usual do a recap from last session. Last time we were together, we talked about vocabulary, and just a reminder of some of the things we said last session. First one was that we don't want to teach like lists and lists of words, because then we don't have time to practice them. It's better to teach fewer terms so we have time to repeat them. We talked about choosing our vocabulary really carefully, what's going to be very useful to the students. We talked about vocabulary notebooks, how that seems maybe like something historical, but it's so good. It's a great tool. It can be on a student's on an actual notebook, or it can also be something they type, but it helps students be more aware of words in English and be curious about learning new words. We talked about not guessing words, but trying to really provide student-friendly definitions, because dictionary use is so challenging. When we send students to the dictionary, we wind up sometimes coming back with not exactly what we were looking for. So you can see my background today, right? So my background today is a picture near my house that I took this winter. So I took it a few months ago, but I wanted to bring you, I think some of you remember I said I was going to bring you some snow. So I'm bringing you some cold snow. So we're going to take in this cold, cold, crisp air for a moment. Okay, here we go. Let's take that. Feel that cold, cold air. Ooh, I'm getting so cold feeling that. So I want to know if you have experienced that kind of cold snow before. You can let me know in the chat if you can feel that cold snow. What else do you feel here? I'm gonna take some cold breaths. So nice. Ooh, I feel freezing. I'm getting bumps, goosebumps. Icy cold. What are all the vocabulary words that we think of with this cold, snowy picture here, this video? What kind of words are you thinking of? I'm thinking of icy. Ooh, frozen, chills, hot chocolate. She wants hot chocolate. Freezing. Laura feels, oh, it's incredible how cold. It's brisk is another one I feel. Oh, I love that. Nice, icy, shivering. I'm making myself so cold. It's crazy. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm getting really cold. I'm a little crazy. It's making me actually feel cold. I know it's very hot probably where you are. It's hot here also in New York, but we're going to be a little bit cold today. So I'm going to jump into the idea of reading tonight. So I have a quote here, and I'm actually going to call on Santiago. Santiago Hernandez, can you unmute for a second? Come, give us your microphone. How are you?
I'm okay. And what about you? Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. Santiago, will you read this quote in English and then read it in Spanish for us?
Your pardon, I couldn't hear.
If you can see it on the screen. Okay, can you read the quote on the slide? It's in English and also in Spanish. Could you read it to us out loud? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I was
Okay,
wondering
no
why
problem.
no one was. Oh, wait a minute. So you never even saw my video. Okay. I'm going to stop you for a second, Santiago, and let me share, and then you can do that, okay?
Okay.
Because
No
you're
problem.
not psychic, or otherwise you would not be able to know what is she talking about. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a little better, right?
Much better.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Do you agree or disagree with these statements?
Mhm.
A book does not discriminate against any reader. All are welcome at the table of literature. Now in Spanish.
Yes, please.
Un libro no discrimina a ningún lector. Todos son bienvenidos a la mesa de la literatura.
Beautiful. Sounds so much better in Spanish. Okay, thank you, Santiago. Everything sounds better in Spanish. Okay, and that's from Julia Alvarez, one of your very famous writers, Dominican writer, and we love her in the United States also. So if you would open your chat, what do you think? Do you agree with this idea, or do you agree with part of it? Do you disagree with some of it? I would love to see what you think. If you can go into the chat for just a moment. Tell us what you think, why you agree, or why maybe you don't completely agree. Okay. Okay, so Sergio says that when we are all able to read, we can all access reading. Let's see, what else do people say? Everyone must be given the chance to read, and every person has the opportunity. A book, Marlene Reyes, a book is like democracy. Marlene, will you tell us what you mean by that? I love that statement.
Hello, everyone. Yes,
hello.
I really think that books never discriminate anyone. So everyone has the right to read, and it doesn't matter how do you feel, what do you think, you can do it. So that's why I think a book is like democracy.
That's wonderful. And would you say that everyone in the Dominican Republic has a place at the table in Spanish? So in other words, is it the book that creates the democracy, or is it the reading skill that creates the democracy? What do you think, Marlene?
I think in this case it's the reading skill, because you can have the book, but if you don't have how understand the book, the text, it's impossible for you to live in democracy. So in this case, it's about reading skills.
Beautiful. How about Rosana, Antonia? What would you like to share?
Okay, I think that we need to get accustomed to read, because in my case, for example, I didn't like to read. I just look for books for reading one day before the final exam. And I remember that my children told me, Mother, are you reading? No, you have a final exam tomorrow. And I began to think about this, and I began to buy books for my children since they were 2 years ago. 2 years old. Okay, yes. Let's go to the library. They were 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and they are different from me. They feel happy when I say to them, let's go to the library. They become crazy. Now they have a lot of books. They like to read.
That's wonderful.
Yes. It's necessary that we create
that's wonderful.
Yes. Now they are much better than me. Yes.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's interesting, Rosana, that you yourself, didn't always enjoy reading, and you would procrastinate, and yet you've turned that around for your children, and they actually really enjoy reading, which is really, that's awesome. I'm going to just call on one more person, maybe Juan Joel Otañez. Do you want to share a thought on this quote?
Yes, of course, teacher. I'm saying, and I agree with the with a slogan, because I never seen, like I read on the chat board, I never seen a book saying that that book is meant for a type of people. For example, I never seen a book saying this book is only for intelligent people. This other one is only for rich people. And every writer, when they write a book, they say they motivate on the front page to read the book. And it doesn't mean to any kind of people to do it, only people. And when I go to a library, to a bookstore, I see the people selling the books that they sell me any kind of book I want. If I want a book, they say, oh, I ask for the price and how much is it? It's $10, $20, 30, and they don't ask me if I have the qualities, if I have the tools to read that book, because it's meant to that. Any kind of people can read any given book. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. You said that beautifully. And I'm going to, I agree with everything everyone has said, and also in the chat, and also just to challenge us to say that, well, there is no book, as you said, that says, oh, you can only open me if you're rich, or you can only open me if you are, know certain things. But at the same time, in a way, if our students don't have the language to understand what they're reading, it's almost like the book saying, this is not for you. And we don't want that for our students. We want them, of course, in Spanish, to be able to pick up anything they want and feel they can read it well and really get the ideas. And with reading in English, of course, it's not going to be the same as reading in Spanish, but still, maybe they really want to learn about Harry Potter, or they want to learn how to computer program, or they want to learn about taking care of their children, and the material is only available in English. We want to be able to give them as much power as possible. And that's why your job in working with reading is democracy. That is democracy, as you said, Marlene, in action, to give them the equal opportunity to enter into the world of ideas, whatever that world is. And not all of us like reading the same things, right? Maybe you actually really hate reading history books, but you love a novella, or you hate a mystery, but you like science books. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. So let's take a look at all of the different types of reading we do. Okay, so let's think for a minute, and we're going to put our hands on for a second. Go to the chat and tell me, let's say today, what are the different kinds of materials that you read today in Spanish or in English? What are some of the things, like we're reading my slides right now. We're reading the chat right now. What else did you read today? Give me some ideas in the chat of different things you read today. And I'm going to call on my co-teachers to just put in the question again, in case anybody comes in later or whatever, they can see what question is being asked. Okay, so the Bible, the news, lots of newspapers, an assignment, maybe Twitter, reading social media. Oh, wonderful. A French book. Twitter counts, definitely, if you're reading it. Okay, sports, video games, a history of Dominican Republic, reading notes from friends, signs, something about technology, Instagram, great. So there's lots of different kinds of reading that you're doing. So I'm just going to lower the hands for a second. Okay. Gmails. Okay, yeah, math. So there's so much reading that you just said, right? You said, you know, WhatsApp or an email or a magazine or a biography or a short story. You gave so many ideas of reading, but what happens in the classroom? Do we give students all of those different materials, or do we just open one textbook and everybody has to read it, right? So think about making your classroom, your English classroom, authentic. How can you bring in more variety of real life reading that you do, right? So let's take a look at all the different kinds of reading we do. We read for a lot of reasons. We read to connect with each other, like you said, texting and emailing. We read because of an academic reason, like you're reading this slide right now or an article. Sometimes you're reading just for one detail, like you open the dictionary, you just need one thing. Sometimes you need lots of details, like reading directions on a map. Sometimes you read for fun. What's her name? Not Queen Elizabeth, but Princess Kate, what's happening? You're just reading for fun. Maybe you're reading the newspaper, but you're not reading every article. You just kind of read little pieces to get the idea. Sometimes you need to read everything, like in a recipe book. And sometimes we read pictures. We look at images and we read them, or even your faces. So we do lots of different kinds of reading. All right. So when I said all of those things, maybe you were remembering when we talked about listening, because listening and reading are both inputs. They come as content or material that we receive. So they are receptive. Through listening or through reading, we gain access to all kinds of different materials. And we talked about speaking being the productive side, as well as we'll talk about writing on Thursday. Okay, so reading is very, very, very similar to listening in terms of teaching this skill, but it is more complicated, right? Because when we are listening, a lot of times the person speaking is in front of us, or they're on a video, or they are using gestures. But when we are reading, we have to make all of the meaning ourselves. Our mind has to decode everything and make sense of it. Okay, so let's take a look at what the brain is actually doing when we are reading. And if you remember with listening, we sometimes listen for details, the words, and sometimes we listen for the big idea, which we talked about is bottom up or top down. So take a look at the words here on my slide, and I want you to put them in the right order. Okay, so this is a scrambled sentence. What's the correct sentence order? And you can put it in the chat. All right, Raphael. He left the wet socks on the floor. Awesome, everybody. Okay, awesome. So how did you do that? How did you know that that was the correct order, right? How did you know that? And you even had the 2 times. Okay, let's see. So he left the wet socks on the floor. You are using a lot of those bottom up skills. You don't know who he is. You don't know where this is or when this is, but you know those words. You're decoding the words. You know the letters, the sounds, the morphemes, you know the syllables, you know the phrases. You also have an understanding of grammar. So you did not say he on the floor left the wet socks, or he the wet socks on the floor left, like they would do in German, where they wait to the end and put the verb at the end. Okay, so you were using those bottom-up skills, but you're familiar enough with the order, sentence order, that you can make sense of that. Okay, now I'm going to just add a picture, and that is my son's wet sock on the floor. Okay, so if I were to give students this scramble sentence and a picture, why does the picture help you unscramble the sentence faster? So I'm going to let you think about that for a second. Here I gave you a picture and the sentence. Back here, I gave you no picture. When we're working with students, we would probably give them a picture. Why does that help our brain? Why does that help our brain? Okay, Ariani. Okay, all right, Raphael. Nice. So we have, great. Okay, so let me hear from a couple of you who want to try to take a guess for that we used when we talked about listening, and what our brain already has here that we use when we're making sense. So you're at this. Elise, do you want to try to explain that a little bit? Nice, Wendy too.
Yes, yes. Can I?
Go ahead, Elise. Yeah, what is your thinking?
Okay, I think that when you use picture to try to teach reading, the student can associate even though they don't know the meaning or exactly the order, the brain is going to be working exactly the moment the student can see the picture. And maybe doing this association, the student can do it in an easy way, the sentence in the correct order, and the meaning of that sentence try to communicate.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Elise. Yeah, you said a lot of things there about not just being able to understand what's happening in this particular situation, but also that even the order of this sentence depends on, in a way, the image can help them with that. Let me hear maybe another idea. How about Lisbeth Diaz?
Yeah, the thing is that our brain is very visual, so it connects ideas with visual things. When we talk about abstract things, then we let those abstract things for higher students, for students that have a higher level, because it's more difficult for them. But especially when we have beginners or intermediate level, like visual aids might help a lot because our brain connects them and links images to procedures, to ideas, and helps them to recognize them better and also to learn better.
Yes, yes, Lisbeth, you're right. The visual is a very strong learning tool. And like you said, some things are very abstract, so it's a little harder to come up with like a concrete image. This case, when we were trying to understand this order, it took us a minute to figure out the situation or the scene that was happening, right? And I noticed, I'm just going to go back in the chat now because I saw it was Zoran Lely. Is Zoran Lely Eunice Garcia Martinez here?
I'm here, Sorangeli.
Yeah, all right. Will you tell us about what does that mean, schemata?
Okay, it's when the idea that we have about something in our mind and we connect immediately with the pictures of something that we watched.
Yes. So when we are going to look at any kind of reading, our brain is going to use everything it has. It's going to pull on past experiences, images filed away in our mind. We don't turn on schema or turn it off. It's just there. Now, if I were to give a sentence, though, that is about something maybe maybe it's in my own life that you have no idea, it's going to be more difficult because you may not have the schema for it, and I might need to explain more or use more images. But yeah, when we are reading, we are decoding. We're looking at each word, but we're also using our background experiences, like sometimes socks get left on a floor. This is something that's familiar to us. So we use the top down, the general schema, as well as bottom up. Let's take a look at that a little more. Here I'm giving you a sentence, but every third letter is missing. Okay, so can you figure out what the sentence says, even though I've skipped some of the letters? See if you can put the sentence into the chat, even though I don't have all of the letters there. Okay. Really nice. Excellent. So you're amazing. You can read this even though these letters are missing, right? How are you doing that? How are you doing it without the letters there? I took away the letters, but you still could read it. Okay. So in this example, we are not necessarily reading every letter and every word, but we know from past experience what those words look like. And what they are finding with the brain research on reading is that although sometimes we do sound out a word syllable by syllable, a lot of what the brain does is take pictures of words, actually takes them in as whole words. So when you saw that without the letters, your brain actually kind of overrides it. Your brain ignores those missing pieces because it's familiar with those words. Okay, so we know we also need students to be able to take in full words and not worry about sounding everything out. Okay, let's take a look now at the next sentence. So we know we can use those bottom up skills, looking at every letter, but also we can just use our general knowledge, right? I feel like there's someone who's not on mute. I just hear like a little background noise. Maybe you all can help me out because
yeah, I'm gonna mute everybody so you unmute yourself. Just a minute. Here goes. Just now unmute yourself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It was just like a little noise, but I'm on this very small computer, so I couldn't check. Thank you, Juan. Okay, so you used your bottom up skills to understand the socks on the floor. You used your top down, your big picture to do this. All right, so try this one now for me. Whoops. What does this sentence mean? Use those bottom up and use your top down skills also. So what is this sentence? Mariela Paulino, I love your face right now. Mariela, why don't you unmute? Nice. Okay. How are you, Mariela?
Hi.
You have a great face. Okay, so let's see what do you think this sentence means?
Well, I'm trying to get started because
What do you think?
Many words that letters, I mean,
okay. So you're lost. You're lost now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now we're getting a lot of different ideas from people. Ronnie Rosario, what do you think?
I think this is not in English. That is because we don't understand it. This is not
right.
English.
Okay, so what language do people think it is? I saw a few things in the chat. Romanian, German, okay, a few, no idea. That's awesome. Euphemia, what do you think?
Okay, hello.
Hi.
I think that we don't know that language because we haven't seen that language. For example, when we are teaching a child, we show them a picture and they connect the word with the picture. And then when we can read a sentence, it is because we know the sentence. That's why we can connect because we know the sentence. But in this moment, we cannot connect it. Why? Because we don't know the language. That's all.
Yes. So very perfect, Euphemia. So what I did to you, which is not very nice, right? I cut you off from any bottom-up skill. You can't just decode it. And I cut you off from top down because you have no idea the topic or anything. So it's like I put a wall. There's no access. There's no access to this language here, right? Ruben Dario, wow, this is perfect for a reading session. Famous Spanish poet. Okay, so tell us, Ruben, any ideas about this?
Well, what I think is that there is a message in whatever it says there, but our brain is not prepared to decode it. But there is there, we don't know what it is.
Yes. Excellent. So I like the way you put that as right now we don't know what it is, but we could. We don't yet know because we don't have the code. All right. So very nice. So let's take a look. This is Icelandic. And it means, for example, you can read this sentence. So I just tried to pick a language that I thought maybe no one is going to know. So yes, it's from Iceland. This is Icelandic. And I think it's a good reminder of what sometimes English feels like. Maybe we forgot because we can read and we use English so much. But when you are a learner, this is sometimes what reading feels like. So we want to make sure our students don't experience this, that we cut them off from decoding and we also cut them off from any general idea. Okay. And we build up the code, as you said. So we need both of these things when we are teaching reading. We want to help our students with big ideas, comprehension, but we also want to help them understand the features and the structures of English. Something that was said earlier, I think is so important, is about enjoying reading. We heard before about how sometimes reading can be, oh, I don't really want to do that. I don't enjoy it. Nobody enjoys reading when reading is very hard to do because you don't get any understanding or meaning from the story. So we want to make sure we give students things they can actually read. Okay, so 6 things we want to think about when we're working with the teaching of reading. We want to focus on joy, fun, and meaning. That is the most important thing. Reading has to make sense. If I give students Romeo and Juliet because I think I am supposed to do that, and they don't understand anything, well, they hate Shakespeare in the end. So that is not a very effective strategy. I want to give students maybe part of Romeo and Juliet because it's challenging. I might want to give students Romeo and Juliet when they're ready to understand it. But we want to give students reading that is going to make sense, that they can comprehend and decode. We want to focus a lot on vocabulary because there's so much vocabulary in reading. We want students to understand how words sound as they read. If they read words that they don't know how they hear, it's very hard to understand. We want them to understand how words are written and put together. We want students to feel they can pick up the reading that we give them, and maybe they stop sometimes, but they don't have to stop at every word to look it up because then the reading is much too difficult. We want them to walk away learning, understanding, being at that table of democracy. Okay, I have a lot of things here. I'm just going to give them to you, and it's probably like too many different things, but I just want to have one place for it. This is like a menu, like when you go to a restaurant and you pick an appetizer and a main course and a drink and a dessert. This is like a menu of things to do when you are planning your reading instruction. And sometimes we get very stuck doing the same activity with reading over and over, and that makes it boring for students. We need some variety. So take a look here and think about, what do I usually, typically, often do? What here do I rarely, hardly ever, or never do when I teach reading? So that you kind of reflect on your teaching practice when we look at these. So first of all, are your students always reading aloud orally, or do they read silently, quietly? Some teachers do a lot of oral reading, speaking out loud, and you're not going to be able to understand as much when you are reading out loud. You understand a lot more when you read silently, but we don't always do that in classrooms. Or maybe you do a lot of that. Okay. Extensive reading means I read a lot of different things, a lot of different types of reading on a lot of different topics. Or do I read also intensively? So I take that one part of Romeo and Juliet and I read it maybe 3, 4, 5 times the same reading. We get different benefits by both extensive and intensive reading. Which ones do you usually do? When you have students reading, you've given them something to read. Do you focus only on the grammar, the vocabulary, or do you also focus on content, on the meaning of what they're reading, or both? Okay. When your students are doing a reading activity, are they solo by themselves? Are they reading with a partner? Are they reading in a group? Or is it a whole class reading? A lot of times teachers use the whole class too much. So some students, it's so easy for them And some students, it's so hard for them because you're kind of not hitting either end. So think about maybe groups. What you do are always summarizing, or do you sometimes do things where you just skim for information? You give them the reading and you take it away and they have to just find something quickly. Or do you do more in depth where they're analyzing the reading? Also, when you're thinking about teaching reading, you want to think about before they start reading, what are you doing to prepare them? While reading, what's happening? And then post reading, what's going on? And then finally, the different materials are the readings that your students do all from the textbook, the course book, or do you bring in your own things that you write for students to read as reading? Do you things in where they see or Dominican in the stories?
Orange silent.
Do they get to
Extensive.
read things that, oh, someone can grab that. Okay, thank you. Is what they're reading something to challenge their thinking, maybe about women's roles and men's roles, or about ideas in society? Do we challenge our students with the things they read? Okay, so I gave you a lot of things there in like this big menu. So let's just take a moment and maybe reflect. I see a couple of hands up, maybe Heriberto, Hilario. Do you have something you wanted to share based on all of these ideas, thinking or reflecting on teaching of reading? Go ahead, Heriberto.
Yes, what I wanted to say is that from my point of view, the best way of teaching reading is involving student in the story, in what we are reading. For example, you read the story and also act like you are in the story, so they can grasp and get into the story and go with you reading in their mind.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So really getting students so involved, they understand and they, what we call, embody it. They're physically part of the story. Wonderful. How about Carmen Abreu? What would you like to share on this?
I would say that when I put all my students in this, when I'm gonna read something, I make copy of the reading that I'm gonna use that day. And what I do is I give them each student a paper. I say, okay, I'm gonna read. When I stop, you have to follow the reading and to the point. And everybody is the same way. They are follow my reading, and then when I stop, the one who found the word first, he continued into the point. And then when he stopped, the next person had to continue. And everybody are the same, we all of them are participating.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, Carmen.
Yeah, I always use that.
That's a great strategy.
Yeah, I use that with them. And they always say it. I found it first. I found it. And they always happy.
Well, because you're making it like a game. And
every class I do, in every unit I made a game because they love to play.
Yes, we all love to play. Things should be a little more fun than they are.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And Carmen, I was going to say that what you're doing by reading aloud while they're tracking is really helping them with those bottom-up skills, because they're, as you said, they're making the association between how it sounds and what it looks like. And in English, sometimes that's very different, how it sounds and how it looks like. And it keeps them engaged with the meaning. So you're helping lift or share the reading challenge because you are reading out loud, and reading out loud is so important that teachers do that as much as possible. Thank you, Carmen.
Yes.
How about Hector Alvarez? Did you want to share something about this?
Yes, we have to write something that call the attention to the students, something interesting for them, because when they read something that they like, it opens the interest of reading by the students. So when, for example, it's very important to write something, some story that could call the attention for the students, something that they can be involved in this, because when they are reading something that they like, it's much better to them.
Absolutely, 100%. It's so important to find materials that will be interesting to them, that they're curious, because it will help them persist and continue to push through the English challenge, because they want to know maybe what happened to the character, or about, maybe it's a biography about someone they're interested in. And we need a strong motivation to read in another language. For example, some of us here have studied Spanish. It's sometimes easier to practice speaking Spanish or listening to Spanish than to open a book in Spanish and try to read it. The cognitive, the demand on our brains is much higher in reading than it is in listening and speaking. So if I really want to know what something says, because like Hector says, I'm interested in it, that's really going to help the motivation. How about Dorisbel Perez?
In my case, I cut the story in different pieces, or the game, in order that they get involved and motivate organizing the idea. It could be a game, it could be a story. And sometimes I tell them to bring their own reading.
Where do they find that, Dorisbel? What would they bring for an example? I love that idea.
I do it first, but then I recommend them to write or find out some story according with what they like, also game.
So maybe they find that on the internet or something like that, Dorisbel?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. That's a great idea.
Technology.
I love that, bringing in something that they want to work on. I think that's wonderful. How about Wendy Carbona? How are you doing, Wendy?
Hello.
Oh, just unmute, Wendy.
She's muted, right?
Yep, there she goes. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Good to see you, Lara.
Good to see you.
Yes, I agree with all my partners, and I agree with Hector that you have to look something for motivate the students. For example, I choose the reading. One activity that I did, for example, I put the learning subjective. The learning subjective, for example, we're going to read an article about sports, for example, Rick sports. Develop a skill, skimming and reading for a specific information. I put the reading to prepare a student for the reading, ask a student to brainstorm things that they already know to the board, that they already know about the topics. We can share together any new vocabulary that they know about for example, the sport. The reading is, for example, risk sport. I try to explain what that risk means, what risky means. For example, that risk means dangerous. I try to talk about different risk sport. and so on.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, you're really showing that you are trying to meet the students where they are, find out about them, and use your knowledge of them. For example, some of you were writing about your students are in like the polytechnic high schools, and maybe they have technology topics. So sometimes you have to read or bring things yourself that you're not as familiar with. I know there was a question here. I think Raphael had a question about the pre-teaching, which is great, because that is connecting to our last session on vocabulary. I really recommend teaching semantics or grammar, the lexicon, the grammatical features while reading. It's difficult to predict what students are going to already know and what things students will be challenged by. And you might have, Hector in your class, you have Carmen in your class. Maybe for Hector, everything is easy. He doesn't really need the pre-teaching, but Carmen needed a lot of that. So there's some time there that we use when we do a lot of pre-teaching that kind of wastes the time. So I do recommend using the time before reading to bring up the schema, bring up the schemata, get the idea. So someone wrote here about students knowing the topic in Spanish makes it easier to learn about in English. But sometimes we're teaching in English something they don't know about in Spanish. So maybe we need to show a short video. We have pictures. We do something so that students' schema is activated. It's ready to receive the reading. And then as students read and we see we get to a point, I want to talk about this, I want to teach about this. Usually it makes more sense when I'm in the reading already. If I gave you a lot of words or grammar rules before you even read the passage, you probably are going to forget what I said when we actually arrive there. However, you might want to use some language to get students started, the feeling of the story. For example, I'm going to go back because before Miss Laura didn't realize that her wasn't sharing her screen. All right, so I'm going back to this. Okay, now let's look at it with the picture, not just the sound. Okay, take a look here. And I asked you to give me words, right? And you gave me a lot of words. I don't know how you did that because I did not have a picture there, but you gave me icy and freezing and snowing and all of that language, right? Okay, so all of that was a way to get students ready, beautiful, okay, for the reading that we're going to do. But I wouldn't go necessarily into a lot of time with the grammar points, etc. Beforehand. Whoops, I'm gonna come back one. I know there are a couple other comments and this was a lot of material here. So I wanna give us a couple of more minutes here before we go on. And any of my co-teachers, if I am missing a question or anything that you think I should address, definitely unmute and tell me because as I said, my internet is a little off today. Okay, let me call on Arabelis because I know you've been waiting a while. Arabelis Gomez, did you want to share anything about the teaching of reading? Just unmute, my dear. There you go.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about the other things. For example, the reading, the importance of reading. That we have to push students to know that reading is one of the very passion. Open a book, the book opens the door to the fantasy, to knowledge, And reading allows to open our mind, don't mind what we want to know.
Yes.
For example, that may to get better our vocabulary or we learn new words, know new places, and that is the better passion is to read. Yeah. And you read aloud, it help to know new pronunciation too.
Yes, yes. It's really a full experience, as Arabelis is saying. It's the hearing, the speaking, it's the listening, and also, as you're saying, it's going to help you with writing because it's giving you ideas and new information. And wonderful. Thanks, Arabelis. Okay. Juan de los Santos.
All right, good evening. Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay. All right, talking about reading, in my thinking, reading involves the reading to be understanding with the text, contributing in the process, the knowledge and the experiences that the reader has to understand and interpret the reading. So I think that we have to know first what the reading is about and to see, because, you know, reading is understanding, you know, the comprehension and to understand, you know, the meaning. That's why, you know, the reader had to be very comfortable and to know each word. As you said, you know, had to be a little vocabulary and they had to understand what they're reading. And that's my idea.
Yes,
all
you
right?
said beautiful, Juan de los Santos. So you had a couple of things I think are really important that I want to emphasize. One is that if students have a reading passage that is so difficult, the teacher has to read it, the teacher has to explain it, the teacher has to say it in another way. The student is not reading, the student is listening to you. So we want to give students a diet of reading material that they can actually consume, that they can actually enjoy. The other thing is that you said something very important, which is, let's say Juan reads this book by Julia Alvarez, In the Time of the Butterflies, and I read the same book. Do we understand exactly the same thing? No, because every person brings their own experiences to the reading. So it's never exactly the same. You're Dominican, so all of the things in her book, you've lived those things. They're going to mean something. For me, I have to maybe look on a picture on the internet. It's not my own experience, so I understand it, but not as you would. So we want to make sure that we allow that space. There isn't one understanding of readings. There are multiple interpretations, and it's a meeting between the reader and the text. Okay, how about Tirsa? Did you want to add something?
Good night.
Hello.
I just want to do a comment. One of the big challenges that we have in education is reading. Not only in English, we are facing problems with all the areas, even in society, because in the Dominican Republic, we don't have the habit to read. And in the school, most of the time we do oral reading, not silent reading, because we have large group, and it's hard that everybody, that especially child, that be quiet doing a silent reading. So it's a little hard to do it at school. So it's
most of the time what we do is oral reading, not silent reading. But when you do silent reading is when people get more ideas, visualize what is happening in the reading, when you can concentrate and give meaning to what we are reading, and that is very important. So we need to encourage a student that read at home. Sometimes I give them books and they take at home. They choose the book that I like. I give them instruction, you need to take care of the books and give me the book back, because at home they can focus and concentrate more. At the beginning, I just say, pay attention to the picture, draw, but later I start to do different activities with the same book. And then at the end, we talk about the content of the book, about what they understand, because they have limitation with the vocabulary too. So it's a very hard challenge that we have here, because the habit of reading is something that we have to work on it in education in the Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Tirsa. You said some really important things, and I just want to comment on a couple of them. We have the same situation in the United States of struggling to get students to read. You know, we are competing with video games and Netflix and all kinds of stuff. And the reading brain is a different brain than what consumes what's on the internet. So we know that when we are on the internet, we might be reading something maybe that's interesting to us, something maybe from the news, right? We're on a website, but we click away. We click to see our WhatsApp. We click to see our Gmail. We click to look at a picture. It's very interrupted, or what they're calling the distracted brain. Maybe someone can put that in the chat, because that's a new book called The Distracted Brain. And it actually makes it hard when I give you a reading in let's say a test, and you just have to sit and read and have the stamina for reading that maybe you have to read for 30 minutes or 40 minutes and answer some questions. We're having a big challenge now in our times with this. And like you said, Tirsa, if I read, think about a movie, you know, when you saw the movie after you read the book, you read the book and later you see the movie and you say, oh, that's not what I was thinking. The person looked different. I wasn't expecting that, because like you said, your brain has made so many images and associations, and that is very powerful. And it is something we have to do a lot of work to maintain the stamina, the focus that students need to read well. And one of the things, Tirsa, with the silent reading, when I was teaching high school, my students hated to read, and they did not like to read in their native language. They did not like to read in English. But we started with 1 minute. 1 minute of silent reading. I also would bring a book, and they would read something they wanted to read, choice, but only 1 minute. And at 60 seconds, I'd say, stop, no more silent reading. And they'd say, miss, I want to keep going, you know? And we'd say, all right, okay, 2 minutes. And then slowly they got up to maybe 10 minutes, even 15 minutes of reading silently. But it takes time, you know, to build that culture for that. Like you said, Tirsa, it's really also here. We do a lot of reading out loud, but there's been a big emphasis for the first language. So let's say your children who are learning to read in Spanish, to give them that silent reading time. is very, very important. So thanks for bringing those things up. I'm going to just call maybe on Elvis Jimenez to wrap us up, and then we're going to go on. Thank you.
Well, my name is not Elvis Jimenez. I am Maximo. What happens is that I had to label another, co-worker's link. So that's why it appears like that.
But you know what? Elvis is a very cool name. So
I'm Maximo. My name is Maximo.
Okay, Maximo.
Well,
thank you, Maximo.
Thank you. Speaking about reading, I think reading is also, as listening, one of the aspects to work on. And this happens to every Dominican teachers too. We don't like reading, most of us. Honestly, we don't like reading. Yeah. In my case, I prefer these days, I've changed the physical books to online books. Mm-hmm. For example, if I want to know something about neuroscience, I enter the book on YouTube. I Google the word, I Google the information, I look for books about it. In the case of French, I do the same. So that helps me. Those kinds of things help me to improve, my amount of, of lexicon. So I disagree. I disagree with the guy who said, with Richard, I think. Richard said that for reading, we need to know everywhere. No, we don't need to know everywhere. It's the same. That happens in everyday dialogues. Some words we never know, but because of the context, we can, get the meaning of those words. And that's important because that gives us, the power to be fluid.
Absolutely.
Then, and sometimes in my case as a teacher, I usually get my students, in kinds of activity like playing roles, and sometimes, and in this case lately, I've decided to look for, topics, issues related to the situation that is happening all around the world, that is COVID-19. So sometimes I ask questions about that. I have the students read the article and I ask them question if they, in order to get to know if they understood what they already, read.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, this time of the pandemic, like you're talking about the COVID-19, and being online, I noticed in my own children, they're preparing now for a big test, and they have to practice reading passages. So I got them like a book, and I can't get them to sit and do it. They just are so distracted. They will sit for hours on their phone doing I don't know what, but to get them to sit and read is very challenging right now, for sure.
Besides,
Glennie, did you want? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Besides, as the Dominican Republic is the main country in the Caribbean where tourism is up. So I usually try to bring into classroom, the aspects of geography, to talk about rivers, to talk about all the beauty that the Dominican Republic has. So because I try to encourage them to use the language in the context by using everyday situation. And besides that, sometimes I invite them to read online newspapers. There's one in the Dominican Republic, which tells everything what is happening in the DR. Because sometimes in those books don't have everyday English, and they need what they need to be understood, and what they need to express, to state, that doesn't appear in books. And they say that's why they say at school they teach English that they don't use every day in the US or in England. So a school has a challenge, because the school must be linked, must be related to life. So we must try to teach to teach the words, to teach the different registers that people use in everyday in everyday life in those countries. Because if they travel, they won't get back and say, well, the English I learned at school was not useful, because they don't use it any longer. So it's a great challenge for us.
That's very true. And like a lot of people are saying in the chat, and what you're saying too, Maximo, is that the using the situations they're going to be in, or the kind of English they're going to want to use. So let's say there's, I don't know, maybe there's a television show that they think is funny. And they watch it with the subtitles in Spanish, or maybe it's dubbed in Spanish. Even to go and take the transcript. You know, when you go to YouTube, you can actually get the transcripts in English, so that they're reading something that's actually a show that they like, that is very current English, for example. Like Sarah said in the chat, it doesn't have to be a book or a textbook. There's reading, as you all said, everywhere to be done. Okay, Glenn, Pilarte, I'm going to end with you here. What would you like to share?
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I am listening my partners about the topic that we are developing today, that is reading. And I think reading is so important, because when the student and the people have the opportunity to read something, in that moment, they can discover many things, they can get more vocabulary. And one thing that is maybe the best is that the person create a critical thinking. And that is very good. When the person have critical thinking, that is not the best that you have only a little information or a few information. They have more information, and that is best. And not this, and they can, like I told you before, they can discover. You were talking about two terms that are so interesting in English, that is input and output. And reading have relation with input. If you want to have a great input, if you want to have a great output, you need to develop, or you need to have a moment for have input. And I think reading is very, very important if you want to have a great output, if you want to listen, maybe not listen, if you want to speak. If you want to develop speaking, you need to read before and after. You are going to have a great output.
Wonderfully said, Glennie. And again, to touch on what you said, that I think is so important. The world today depends on people being able to understand the difference between fake news and real news. We are in a world crisis. We have so many parts of the world where there is more and more distress and hate, because people consume reading material that is very biased. So we don't always see the other side. We don't, like Glennie said, we don't get a chance to think critically. What is this point of view? What is that point of view? And now what do I think? And it's so important for us as teachers to help our students understand tone and bias and argument as they consume materials. And I think all of what you have been saying, you know, about the importance of reading, you also touched on, Glennie, in the idea of output. I can only write about or talk about, like Maximo said, I can't talk about things in English if I don't know what those words are. So a lot of the input that we give students comes through the written word, comes through things they're going to consume. They do hear English, but they see English a lot more. They see English in the grocery store, on the computer, everywhere they go, they see a lot of English. So we want to help them be able to produce more as we give them a healthy diet, a rich diet of reading. Okay, wonderful. Thanks everybody so much. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually look at some activities, but we're going to look at 12 activities, 4 pre-reading, 4 while reading, 4 post-reading, that all have to do with the same book. Okay, so that way you kind of get a feel for how you could use this in class. Okay, are you ready? So you might want to get a little piece of paper to write if you want, so that we can play together and practice these activities. Okay, so here we go. Something, there were 2 terms too that I saw here that I just want to mention. Christine Olson talked about, and maybe one of you can just type in here again, the idea of text sets. So we use these a lot in classrooms in the United States. If we're reading about the rainforest, we might have a magazine article, a book, a biography of someone, even a storybook, all about the rainforest, so that students read a lot of layered around the same topic. That really helps with vocabulary, because I'm not reading about rainforest on Monday and the Arctic on Tuesday, and Wednesday is about the grocery store. We want to keep things in tight units and giving them a lot of different readings. So text sets, multiple readings, multiple sources on the same topic. That's going to recycle vocabulary. So maybe one of you can just pop that in there. And the other idea is anchor text. So you see I have a picture of an anchor. I was trying to think of how to say anchor in Spanish. I don't know that word. Can someone put that in the chat for me? How do you say anchor in Spanish? Ancla. I was going to say it's something like anchor, but it's not ancora. Okay, ancla. Okay, so we call this an anchor text or an anchor book because I use it to, do you say anclar? To anchor everything that I'm going to do, all my language activities. So here we go. Activity 1. This is one of my favorites. It's called a word splash. So I have some words that I pulled from a story that we're going to read. I want you to take your paper and tell me what you think the story is going to be about. What will it be about? The words are smiling, night, snow, mountain, and adventure. What is this story that I have here? I have it here, but I'm not going to show you yet. What is the story going to be about? Okay, so Orange has that idea. Camping. It's a camping trip, a family trip, a vacation, some kind of tourism, a travel, a field trip. Okay, so in this activity, I'm not going to do it tonight, but I would put students in a small group or a breakout room and have them come up with what this story will be about. Okay, and probably there's going to be a lot of different ideas. Maybe it's about Christmas. Maybe it's about some movie Frozen. Maybe it is a crazy camping trip. Okay. Another way you can do this activity is you give each student a different sentence, just one sentence from the book or the story or the text, and let them try to guess. Okay. So this is a prediction activity. I know you use these a lot. Prediction activities are very, very important before you start reading. Okay, so Areli says this is going to be a storm in Christmas. Okay, nice. Oh, and you can even make a title like Maria said. Okay, so word splash, you don't need any electricity. You don't need any technology. You just put some words up on the board and you let students work. Important. Don't tell them the answer too fast. Let them use their imagination, use their prediction. It's going to kill the activity if you stop and tell them what it is. Let them play. Don't tell them until the next time you see them. Make them wait to find out what it's about. Okay, or pictures, like Yesenia said, fabulous. I can do pictures as well, right? I showed you that video with the music. Maybe I just do that. Okay, wonderful. So we have some ideas: a weekend in Aspen, an adventure in a countryside, a crazy Christmas, etc., etc. Okay. Now, next activity, let's see. Now I'm going to tell you about the author of the book. And now what do you think this story is about? Okay. His name is Ezra Jack Keats. He was an illustrator and an author of many books for children. Keats was one of the first authors of children's books in the United States to feature Black children, African-American children, as main characters. Ezra had noticed that the main characters in the books that he drew pictures for, that he illustrated, were always white. That didn't seem fair to other children who deserved to see characters in books that looked like them. Keats was born in 1916 in Brooklyn, New York, and spent his whole life in New York City. He started drawing as a child and won prizes for his art in school. Okay, so now I've given you a little more information. Remember, I gave you some of the words from the story. Now I'm giving you something about the author. Now, what do you think this story is about? Okay, about his childhood. Maybe it's something related to Black people, something Bigfoot, okay? Something about racism or equality, because now you have this kind of story about him. Maybe you can guess the setting where the story is going to take place, okay? Where do you think it might be? And it might be about childhood. Okay. So here, I know that these words are definitely in the story. Smiling, night, mountain, snow, adventure. And now I also know a little about him. Where do you think this story is going to be? Is it going to be in Norway, do you think? Where do you think it might be? I'm going to wait and see what you say about that. Thank you. What's the setting? Okay, so Kenya says a winter in New York. Okay, and so I could ask her, why? Why do you say it's a winter in New York? Maybe there's going to be some Black people having adventures in the snow. Okay, so we're using the information well to kind of start to predict something about children. Okay, let's now go a little further. I'm going to give you the title of the book now. Okay, the title is The Snowy Day. Now, what do you think the book is about? Remember the words and remember about the author, and now I'm giving you the title also. So what do you think the title is telling you? Okay. Okay, The Snowy Day. So maybe it's a bad day. Maybe the school is off. There's no school that day. Okay. What's going to happen here in this story, do you think? Something about a child in the snow. Okay, so Esther Eugenio, something with, okay, beautiful. There's some kind of day with snow. there's some kind of playing. Maybe it's sad, maybe it's hopeful. Okay. But we saw before, maybe it's funny. Maybe it's a friendly boy. Okay, great. So again, don't say the answers. Nothing's wrong. You're all using English. You're all predicting. And believe me, the longer you wait, the more they want to read the story. Even if they would not be interested if you just said, here, read it. But now they want to know, okay, miss, what is it? What is the story? Okay, let's keep going. Now I'm going to give you a picture. Okay, I'm going to give you the picture of this book. It's the cover of the book. So now what do you think the book will be about, or the story will be about? Okay, now what do you think it is? Where is it? What's the setting? Who's the character? What's the situation? What do you think is going to happen in the book? Okay. Okay, so we're into racism, right? Because of the author. But now look at the picture. Look at the picture. Look at where you think it might be, what this child seems to be doing, like the colors, kind of the feeling of it, because we're also reading the art of the images as well. Okay, wonderful. A snow day of an African-American boy, a happy snow day, enjoying the snow, a boy looking at the snow, looking at his own footprints, a day off. Okay. Okay, beautiful. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to read you the first couple of sentences from the book. All right. And let's see how we did. Okay. So this is called a stop and jot. Jot is just a quick writing. You had a lot of predictions. Now I'm going to read to you, and I want you to listen and see if you can get the idea now of what the book is. Okay. So here it goes. This is the beginning of the book. The snowy day. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. He picked up a handful of snow and another and still another. He packed it round and firm and put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. Then he told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. Remember the wet socks? Okay. So is the story kind of what you thought it would be, or are you going to change something now that you heard the first sentence in the story? Okay. So this is now we're beginning the book, and like was said earlier, I can read out loud and I can stop. And Kenya says, it's just what I thought it would be, which is great, which means that the student is doing really good predictions, really using the information. Sometimes it's fun to trick students a little bit. Okay. Another thing you can do now is read and respond. Sometimes we do prediction. Now the students are ready. What's the story? What's the story? And then we read the whole story. Don't do it. Give a little bit. Stop and let them react. So here's the sentence. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. Now I'm going to ask you to respond. Have you ever seen or played with snow? So I want you to write in the chat, but you would write in your response journal as a student. So have you ever played with snow? Anyone here? Okay, yay. Josiah is here. Okay, everyone who has not yet played with snow, you must come to New York. If not this winter, next winter, you're going to stay in my house. I don't have a lot of room, but we're going to put you here so you can play with snow. This is something that must happen. Okay, so now the teacher, you can write back to the student in column 3, or you can have students exchange papers and they write back to each other. You don't have to read the whole book. You could just read a part of it and react to it, okay? So now we're in the story. We're in the process of reading the story. Another thing that's great to do is annotations. So in annotations, we give students some part of the book and we have them react to it by highlighting or writing notes, and we can give them questions like, what do you think it sounds like, or it feels like, or it looks like, or what is going to happen to the snowball he put in his pocket and then he went inside the warm house, okay? And I can also have them, students, react to language. You know, what language in here is new to you? Or are we talking about the past tense? What tense are we using? Or what adjectives do you see happening here? Josiah, did you want to say something? Oh, the snow. Wow, that looks great. Where was that?
That was in Michigan. And it was very cold, and that was the first time I saw snow. And this is
what does that feel like, right? And if some students, maybe no students have ever touched snow, and maybe you, the teacher, you haven't yet seen snow, maybe we need to look at some video and hear how does snow sound. What do you think it feels like? Or make snow for the classroom. So many things we can do while we're reading before we even finish the book. Okay. You can also do it as an ongoing notebook, what we call a reader response log. A log is like a journal. So students can continue to pick parts of this story that they like and react to it or make a picture or make a connection. Heriberto, did you want to say something?
Yes, do you think that do you think that this story, I mean, this activity can be made in Spanish as well? I mean, let's explain better. Like English is in Spanish, like telling the student or asking student questions so they can answer in Spanish, and we can translate it later on. You know what I mean? Because some students can't actually answer. They can understand sometimes, but they cannot answer the question in English.
Okay, thanks for that question. That's a great question. And we talked, not everybody was there because it was at the end of class last time, but we talked a little about translation and some of the times we would want to use a translation and times where we don't. And in general, we would want to pick a story that students, as you said, can understand pretty much what's happening. Because some of you have very short amount of time to teach English, you don't see the student every day, or the student is not in a bilingual school, work with some of the language. I know it keeps going on and off. I'm not sure why. Maybe one of you guys can just text Juan in the chat just to ask.
No, I know, I can hear you. Don't worry. I'm just trying to adjust enough space for the recording because you run out of space. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so let's take a look at these sentences. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Do you see how those are the sentences from the story, from the book, but they're all scrambled up?
Imagino que la tierra se siente bien cada vez que salen esos vientos.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So how about, does anyone want to try number 2 in the chat? See if you can unscramble it. These are sentences that I already read to the students. They're sentences we did already, but it's a chance